views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome, good people of the Bronx and beyond. My name is Christina Pagán, and I am your host for A Life in Art. On this show, we'll bring you engaging and personal conversations with artists with whom you may not be familiar. People who have been working on their craft for at least a decade and are at a crossroads where passion meets necessity. We'll discuss creativity and inspiration with our guest artists, but also find out what it takes to balance the struggles of practical life while pursuing their passions. Our guest today is an educator and talented hip-hop dancer. She is the first and only education director for H+, the Hip Hop Dance Conservatory, and serves as one of the company's principal dancers. She speaks passionately to the main problems that continue to plague the hip-hop dance community and our world at large. Today we learn about Yvonne Chow's life in art. And we are on set with Yvonne Chow. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so that was a really long list of everything that you do, and probably just a little bit of actually every single thing that you've been doing so far. But what got you into hip-hop dance, first of all?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest influences was watching music videos growing up. I always came home 3:30 p.m. TRL and like watching, you know, like all these different like dancers with their backup, you know, like Missy Elliott, Aaliyah, and I just really wanted to do it too. You know, I just kept watching them, and I'd like download the music videos and like try to copy what was going on. I invite my friends over, oh, let's figure out how to do this video, you know, and like try to incorporate it. So that was one of the biggest things, was watching it on TV and just seeing people just look so confident in what they were doing and wanting to be that as well.
Are you from New York, or are you from, I think you're from California, right?
California, yeah, from the Bay Area. It's a city called Foster City, and pretty much spent my entire life there up to high school, and then I was like, all right guys, I gotta go to New York City. I gotta see what that's all about. So
that's pretty interesting, because we've spoken to a lot of artists so far who've done the opposite.
Okay, yeah.
They've been in New York, or they've been on the East Coast, and they want to go to California. What drew you to New York?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I guess number one, hip hop is from New York, you know, the culture. And at the time, I didn't even know that like popping, boogaloo, and locking were all from California, like straight from like Bay Area. So I was like, oh, I have to go to New York City, you know, to learn about this. And lo and behold, you know, after moving through some different like dance studio classes and stuff, you know, I get to the Hip Hop Dance Conservatory. And, you know, they're talking about all these elements, and they're like, oh, you know, this is from California. I'm like, what? Like, I was just there, you know, but it's been a whole journey just to really learn more about the culture, immerse myself in it. And I wanted a place to train too. And I thought, God, if there's gotta be a place to train, it's gotta be in New York City. I didn't know about the conservatory at the time, but I was like, it's gotta be there. So that was one of the biggest things. And I think also just the vibrancy of it, the life, the rawness. It's like, there's just this pace that I really love and enjoy about the city, and still do to this day. So
you said that you took some classes before you found the conservatory. What was that like for you? What was that experience like?
Oh my gosh. I remember going to dance classes and being super nervous. I was like, you know, they'd say 5, 6, 7, 8, and I just stand there like really blank. You know, it was really hard. Like, I didn't know anybody, and dancers, you know, sometimes they just kind of keep to themselves, you know. So it was like I was trying to find a, you know, a community of people. You know, I did a couple of clubs at New York University. That's where I went to college. And it was great, but I knew that there was a lot more that I needed. You know, I was trying to just create from whatever it is that I knew, but I could sense in myself that there was definitely a void that had to be filled in terms of education and like more knowledge and more training and stuff like that. So it definitely gave me a lay of the land, I guess you would say, like just where, like what is out there for hip hop dance. And even at that time, because now there's so much more, you know, but at that time, it was still pretty like low key, you know, and so that was a big understanding for me to realize like its training was not a big thing for a lot of people. It was just kind of like, oh, you take classes, you go here, you go there. So it definitely was important because it gave me context for like what I was entering into, essentially.
So my question, you bring up an interesting point, classes versus training. What's the difference?
Yeah. Well, typically classes last anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half for dance, and they're focused mainly on choreography for the most part. So it's about learning a sequencing of movement and then performing it, you know, so kind of moving from the instruction to the performance really quickly, which is one part of dance training for sure. But training requires building up, you know, your physical acuity, so your ability to do the dance itself. Because a lot of people think that dance itself is just the exercise, but you have to exercise for the dance, you know. So being able to up your endurance levels, your strength, your flexibility, that opens up your range as a dancer. And gets you to be able to do more things without injuring yourself, you know? So training is the physical aspect of it, and then also obviously the drilling in the form itself, you know? And oftentimes with dance classes, there's not a lot of drilling that goes on because it's more about choreography. So being able to really understand, well, what's the foundation that I'm working with, and then how do I use that in choreography and also in like freestyle as well, you know?
So speaking of foundation, is your family pretty close?
Like in terms of
When you were growing up?
Yeah.
No, I mean when you grew up, was it like a tight-knit family?
Yeah.
Did they support your need to move to New York?
I think that is it's a very nuanced thing, because it wasn't like they were against it. They were definitely concerned. They were nervous about it, and you know, they sent me away because I was going to NYU, right?
Right.
So my mom, she told me, you know, before I left, she was like, okay, can you promise me that you're not going to dance when you go to New York? And the reason she said that was because she thought that I would get so caught up in dancing that, you know, I wouldn't be able to concentrate in my academics, da da da. So I'm like, yeah. And then in my head, I'm like, no. So when I got to New York,
right?
yeah, right. I got to New York, and then after a month, I really tried. I like tried to not dance for a month. And I remember one day I just felt like, oh my God, I have to, like, if I don't move right now, I will like explode, you know? So I remember like going to my college dorm, we had like this dance studio in the basement, and I just put on my iPod and I danced for like 2 hours long. And afterwards I was like, okay, I realized that I can't do this. Like, I have to dance, you know? And so it's been a very constant communication and relationship, teaching them about why dance is important to me and why it's vital to my life, and why I don't have to give up one thing for the other, you know, that I could still excel academically and also excel, you know, kinesthetically, you know. And really, I think throughout the years in the conservatory, like my mentor, Safi Thomas, like he's taught me how it really is about having the education that allows you to be able to dance better, because the more you know about culture and music, your body, I mean, just the more knowledge you have, that's going to reflect in the way you move, because your brain is the one that's controlling your body, you know. So I've learned how to let go of that dichotomy that so often gets brought up, like, oh, you know, your kid isn't doing well in school, they can't be dancing now, you know, and helping people realize this is actually a way to be able to take in that knowledge and use it, you know, in your expression, you know.
One leads to the other, right?
Right.
Creativity allows you to open your mind and take in other knowledge. It's a perfect
Right.
place for us to pause here and take a quick break. We'll be right back with more from Yvonne when we return. Stay tuned.
Teachers today are finding new ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places, and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, you know, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science, become the mayor or something, make the situation better for other people. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
Welcome back to A Life in Art. We're here with hip-hop dancer and activist Yvonne Chow. So we left off with you getting into the conservatory, learning that education is more than, dance education was more than what has been shown, right?
Right.
So what has the conservatory done for you in terms of your art?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things is that I was opened up to a community and a culture. And I think that's really important because, especially in hip hop, which is a Black and Latino cultural heritage, and me not being from that culture, it is important to acknowledge that somebody like Sophie opened up the space for me to actually learn it and to train in it. And that's number one, you know, like actually just being given that space and that opportunity, you know. And he's created an environment that is really focused on building community, supporting one another in what we're doing, non-judgment. So that's so important for dancers because oftentimes we're already very insecure about making the choice to dance. Then we're insecure about what we look like in the mirror. You know, there's just all these different things that are going on, you know, in our heads. So, you know, giving a space to people where they can actually start to work out all those things, you know. And also he created a technique called the Blade Dance technique. And that technique is about building leaders. So I wasn't just going in and learning how to do my craft, which is obviously what I wanted, but also learning how to be a leader in the community. And him tirelessly teaching me that I am a leader, you know, and because I think when you first get into it, you know, you're kind of like, oh, well, let me wait till, you know, I'm really good as a dancer, you know, let me wait till this person validates me or this person acknowledges me. And, you know, what he always teaches is like, well, the moment you start, you're a part of the community, and the community needs a lot of leaders, not just one or two. Everybody has to see their part in it, you know. And so he taught me and everybody how to like build up those leadership skills, you know, and how to start being more active in the community and not just being like a passive, you know, contributor, but really being somebody that sees their part. And I think that that's a big thing for an artist to learn from the beginning, you know, because you're always thinking about, well, what is the art that I'm creating going to do for the community? Like if I'm building myself as a dancer, what am I looking to contribute with that dance that I'm creating, or whatever the art may be, you know? So I think all those things have really allowed me to see all the different areas that I can bring the art to, you know, and see that it's not something that has to just be contained, you know, within dance, but you can share dance and art with lots of different people, and a lot of people that don't even see themselves as artists, you know, and help them recognize, hey, this is a part of you too that you just haven't tapped into, you know. So that's, I think, a big part of it is learning how to be a community leader, learning how to engage people in your community and engage people in your art form, help them learn how to respect it, how to understand it, you know, and that's a big thing for hip hop, you know, because still to this day, though it's so popular, it's everywhere, and people, you know, they get so excited about it, at the end of the day, they don't necessarily respect it still, you know, and so the more there are leaders to advocate for the art form and, you know, speak on its behalf and be knowledgeable about it, the more it can grow and be better.
And it's great that you being a woman would be a leader as well, because there's so much to go, there's so much on top of that, layers and layers of, you know, women feeling insecure and not wanting to step up and be on people's toes. And then of course there is the stereotype about Asian women being timid and not stepping up and being leaders. So you have all of that on top of you, and then Sophie trying to push you to be the leader, and you're like, what do I do? What do I do? What was that like for you the first time that you led something through either the conservatory or anything else?
Yeah, wow. The first time, like, I would say that I would distinguish it as the first time because we were always leading, but it was when we were doing, it was a reality TV show. And we went, it was in the dead middle of winter, and we had like, oh God, I want to say like 60 like youth that were from like crews like all over New York City, amazing dancers. And I was like, you know, my maybe like second year. And so, you know, we're teaching them our technique, you know, teaching them about meditation, you know, encouraging them in their choreography and stuff like that. And so it was like, we had a whole day already. We like ran through the snow. I remember like it was so cold. And we get on the train. We went all the way back. We were in Brooklyn, went back to Manhattan. And when we got to the studio, and he goes, okay, you need to teach a class. And he literally, like in the moment was like, you're going to go teach it right now. I was like, okay. I was like, all right. And I remember I just got out of myself, you know, whereas I got out of my head, you know, where it was like all those doubts and fears. I was like, Yvonne, you have no choice. Like, you just have to step up and do what it is that you know how to do, you know. And I had been training, so it's not like I didn't know. And I remember just like really like getting in tune with the students, you know, pulling out things that I knew, and like being okay being myself, you know. And that was like one of the most pivotal moments for me, because it was just like pulled out of me, and I was like, okay, and I stepped up to it, you know. And it was definitely nerve-wracking for sure, but it was certainly like, it's experiences like those where it's like you realize like when the challenge comes, like you're ready for it, you know. And oftentimes when the challenge comes, we say, wait, I'm not ready, hold on. But it's just because we feel, you know, all these different things, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not ready. We just have to relax into it, and all that stuff will surface, you know.
Right.
So yeah, that was one of the first times I stepped up.
Has it gotten easier since then?
You know, yeah,
Just a little bit.
yeah, just a little bit. You know, I've since been, you know, teaching, you know, all the different classes that we have at the conservatory, in the academics, you know, with anthropology and physiology and things like that, and also the dancing as well. And I think, you know, the biggest thing for me, like being able to teach more effectively and just be calmer when I'm doing, is really like building up my understanding of who I am as a person, my sense of self, you know. I think when you don't really have a good understanding of your own identity, then you feel very nervous trying to connect with other people and their identity, right? And how do you, you know, relay all this information, and you don't really, you're not sure of yourself, and you don't know who you are. So I think that self-knowledge, you know, which Bambaataa talks a lot about in hip hop, like knowledge of history, knowledge of self, like that's so important. Building that in yourself, cultivating who you are, because then you can be yourself with other people, and you're not trying to be this teacher person or, you know, this choreographer person, but you're who you are, and you're sharing that with other people, you know. And if you can't do that, then how can you dance? Because dance is supposed to be an expression of who you are, right? So that self-knowledge is such an integral part of being a dancer, becoming a dancer, you know.
Perfect.
So.
Wow. So I want to ask you more, but we have to take a break, so we're going to get back to that. We'll be right back with more from Yvonne when we return.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, you know, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science, become the mayor or something, make the situation better for other people. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
Teachers today are finding new ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places, and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable.
Today, 1 out of every 4 American kids is Hispanic. Many of the future doctors who will care for us, the scientists and entrepreneurs of our country, can be your kids. And the Hispanic Scholarship Fund helps you prepare, plan, and pay for your kids' college education.
And we're back on the Life in Art with Yvonne Chow. So we just left off with you talking about finding your sense of self and what that means in dance and being a leader. When did you know that art was part of who you needed to be?
When I was like 3 years old. There's this story that I always tell everybody about dance, where I was at do you know Chevy's by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very fine dining Mexican restaurant.
Pinkies out when we drink.
So I was at Chevy's with my family. I was 3 years old, and the band came up and they started playing, and I literally got out of my table. I went to the table next to me that had people. I grabbed some lady's fork and I just started like dancing and dancing. And my mom came by and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, excuse me." She like put the fork back, and I was like, "Oh, no. What's wrong? I don't understand," you know? And I always bring up that story because it's like, we know when we're children, you know, like it's a part of our expression, you know what I mean? Like dance it's everybody's expression. It's just that some people don't engage in it, you know, but like our bodies are not just meant to carry us from point A to point B, but we're meant to use it for expression, you know? And so that's what I always encourage, you know, people are like, "Oh, I can't dance," or da-da-da. I'm like, you can, you know, like everybody can. It obviously takes practice like anything else, but it's certainly a way for us to share who we are with other people, you know? And that's honestly, like what I have continued like understanding. I did have doubts here and there, but I mean, I think just from when I could start moving and walking, it was like, that was it.
There was no stopping you from there.
There was no stopping. I would dance everywhere, you know, like we'd be at the grocery store and I'd be like, like running down the aisles dancing. Mom would be like, stop, you know, like she'd always try to stop me. I'm like, no, I can't stop. Anytime I heard music, you know, anytime like I watched like, you know, Disney like sing-alongs and stuff. I mean, I was, yeah, it's not like a choice. It just kind of chooses you, like Graham would say, you know, it's like you feel the sense of urge to do it, and it's like, you know, you can't kind of deny it, you know. So
I find that I do that myself too. I'm standing on a line, and even if it's music that I'm not really keen about,
right,
I'm moving and I can't help it.
Right.
Like, do you like this song? No, but I can't stop.
It really sucks, but I'm just gonna keep moving.
So that being said, what is your favorite style of dance?
Hi. Well, I mean, something that Sophie, like the artistic director, has taught us is not to have a favorite style, but to really learn and respect all the different foundations of hip hop dance, you know, and so really giving equal weight to each of them, and learning them like languages, you know, that you can communicate with other people. So, you know, you have your West Coast styles like popping, boogaloo, locking. You have your East Coast styles, rocking, breaking, and party dance, you know, and God, each one of them is like a world unto itself, honestly. Like when you delve into it, it's like you can spend your whole life like just building and really like getting into understanding it, you know. And I think what has helped me like really understand it more is just being with the culture and the community, you know, coming, you know, here and like, you know, getting to like Mastermind Rocker anniversary, you know, Dynamic Rocker anniversary, Rock City Crew, it's like all coming up in the summer, you know, and like getting immersed in like all these people's lives and, you know, what they did and how they created what they created, you know. And then recently getting to know the West Coast family as well, because a lot of the people out there have just started to come up again, you know, like that were kind of underground for some time or just even not in the dance for some time. So getting to know like, you know, Pop Tart, you know, and Mr. Penguin, Plick Plock, all these people that, you know, were roboters, you know, were strutters, you know, and again, like hearing their stories, like that all has really helped me to understand like the story that I'm carrying forward for them, you know, the legacy that I'm bringing forward, because it's not my dance, you know, and to be able to hear that, I mean, those are all things that help me understand how each one of them is so integral to, you know, the overall diaspora of hip hop, you know. And then even on top of the dance, you know, you have your MCing, your DJing, your graffiti and knowledge all over that. So it's like, I don't see any one of them as like better or my favorite. I see all of them as being these equal expressions, you know, because when Boogaloo was coming up in the Bay Area, rocking was coming up in New York, you know, and so you see how during the mid 60s to late 60s, how two different coasts with the same music, you know, soul music and rhythm and blues, how they have two totally different expressions. And I just find that so fascinating, you know, like to see that and to see the commonalities, but then also the stark differences, because, you know, Californianites and New York people are two totally different breeds, you know. So yeah, I love all of them, you know. They're just all really, really beautiful forms of dance.
So you mentioned in your intro that you're also a writer and an advocate for certain issues that are happening in the hip hop community and at large. Which is one that speaks most to you?
Cool. Well, I think something that we talk about at the conservatory a lot is that hip hop is just a microcosm of society. You know, it only will hold the same challenges that our overall society will hold, right? And I think something that you were talking about earlier, me being a woman, I think patriarchy, gender inequality is a huge one. It is like literally right now the infrastructure that we live our lives in, you know, and I think that that is something that definitely plays a part in hip hop, because this is a male created dance, right? So it's not a dance that was, you know, majority wise created by women. It was majority wise created by men. Obviously women were contributing and there are women pioneers, but for the most part it is a male dance.
Right.
And you know, me being a woman, it is important for me to encourage other women, like you were saying earlier, to be in the dance and to understand their expression as a woman in the dance as well, you know, and to recognize that you know, them going into the cipher, you know, when they're the only woman and there's all these men around, you know, is so important, you know, because there's that woman who's standing in the corner who's watching, and when she sees you go in, she's going to think differently about what she could do, you know. And I mean, there's just so much that we are challenged by in terms of being able to really communicate with one another as men and women, being able to actually see women as valuable, the same value as men, and being able to then treat women with that level of respect, you
Without
know.
being sexualized.
Yes, and I think the thing is that right now we're in a place where, you know, we think that, you know, chivalry, you know, and, you know, kind of like, being polite to women is respect, you know, or, bringing a chair out for women is respect, you know, but respect is paying women equally as men, giving them the same opportunities, not telling them, oh wait, okay, let's have this person do it because they'll probably have better expertise, you know. That's like real respect, you know. And this is a conversation that we're not really having, because every time we bring it up, it's just, oh, you're complaining, you know, like, look at all the good things that, you know, men do for you, look at what they have created, all these different events, you know, for women. But at the end of the day, if your mentality is still one where you're looking at women as less than or less valuable, then all those things don't matter, you know, and we're not getting to the root of it. And that is then infecting hip hop dance, you know, as well. So I think that is a huge challenge that is infrastructurally what needs to be deconstructed in order to allow all these other challenges that we face as society to start to mend itself as well. So
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen right away. And we're unfortunately running out of time. But as we always ask our artists, if you had to choose, would you do it again? And what is some advice that you would give to the next generation coming up?
Yes, if I had to choose again, I'd do it again, you know, so I don't regret any decisions that I've made relative to my life and art, and being with H+, the Hip Hop Dance Conservatory, like all of it has been such a wonderful and challenging and rigorous and like just amazing experience. So, and what I would say to the next generation is that what's needed is a new infrastructure for arts. Because as it stands right now, and I think this is what this whole TV show is about, you know, we feel like we have to either, you know, have art as a hobby or just don't have art at all, you know, or be a struggling, starving artist. In order for the next generation to not have to come up to this choice, they have to do things differently than we did and our predecessors did, which means that we have to start building up a new system for arts where we're actually supported, not just relative to our art, but to our life, right? Because a lot of artists can't do their art because they're just trying to live life, like trying to get groceries, you know, trying to, you know, have a place to live in, you know, all these things that we struggle with. And then by the end of the day, we have no time to actually do our art. So we need a new infrastructure. We need new systems that are going to support us. We need a lot of new innovative ways of thinking about things, and not just repeating what has already been done, but learn from the mistakes, you know, of our history and say, okay, it was already done that way. It's not working clearly because there's so many people that are starving artists. So let's do something different, you know, and that takes expanding our knowledge and really educating ourselves to be able to do that.
In the end, it all comes back to education, right?
Yes, it's true.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
It seems we've run out of time as per usual. So thanks to Yvonne for sharing her life and art with us, and thanks to you for joining us today. We want to encourage you to connect with us on social media. Visit us on Facebook and YouTube at A Life in Art, and Instagram and Twitter at A Life in Art TV. We'll be back with more stories from emerging artists when we return with A Life in Art.
Teachers today are finding new ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable.